Hi friends, Kathryn Korostoff from Research Rockstar here, and welcome to part 4 of our 4-part series on preparing market research and insights teams for 2022. In this 4-part series, really what we've been trying to do is, with our guests, of course, is really look at what we've learned in 2021 and see how that can apply as we plan for 2022. You know, what can we do for continuous improvement? We started off a few weeks ago with a focus on research methodology choices, and then we tackled improving survey data quality, and then we talked about work from home. And in this part, we're going to be talking about what we learned about our own skill and knowledge needs in 2021 that will help us to inform 2022. And for today, I'd like to welcome again my very good friend and one of my favorite market researchers, Jeffrey Henning from ResearchScape. Jeffrey, do you want to give a brief introduction?
Yeah, I'm the Chief Research Officer for ResearchScape. We make Research Story, which is analytical software that'll take your data from SurveyMonkey, Alchemer, Qualtrics, Decipher, and run it through an expert system and produce an analysis so that you can then go through and add your value on top of it and have a lot of the heavy lifting done for you. I'm passionate, like Kathryn, about education. She and I had worked together on the certification committee task force for the Insights Association. So we're both big believers in promoting and raising the standards of education throughout the industry. So thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeffrey. And I think folks know me, but briefly, I'm Kathryn Korostoff. I run Research Rockstar Training and Staffing. And I'm somebody who's been a hands-on researcher for many years, but the last 10 years, I've really been focused on trying to help everybody become a research rock star, whether that's through augmenting your teams with short-term expert help on our staffing services, or through advancing your team's skills through training. And we have the largest catalog of e-learning courses for both qualitative and quantitative research topics. So obviously Jeffrey and I both care a lot about skills, right? Because I'm in the e-learning business, right? And Jeffrey's just a leader, of course, in the research space overall. And so we both really care about skills. And of course, that means our skills as well as the skills of other folks. And so Jeffrey, I think to start the conversation, as I'm thinking about the skill requirements broadly for our colleagues, for our peers in the industry, one of the big topics that I see for 2022 is what I'm calling my researcher, my data consultant. And I wanted to use that sort of as my umbrella term because I feel like these days, we as market researchers really do need to be data consultants. I think this is something that's been happening for a while now, but I feel like we're really getting to that point where it's no longer you're differentiating yourself by being a data consultant, by being somebody who's really fluent and understands a wide variety of data sources and methodologies. I feel like now it's like table stakes. For a while, it was a differentiator. It was a differentiator for a while if you were a market researcher who knew when to call on non-market research traditional data sources and methods. And now I feel like we're really at that critical point now where if every project that comes your way is you're going to respond to as a survey or a focus group or as in-depth interviews, I really think that you're going to find some challenges in 2022 in terms of what people are expecting from methodology plans, what people are expecting in terms of consultativeness. And one of the things I always like to do when I'm starting to sense trends or I'm feeling like I'm picking up a lot of signals about what the market really wants from market research and insights professionals, one of my favorite things to do is go look at job ads. Let's look at, a couple hundred recent job ads from our industry and see what I find. And I want to share this one because it's really representative of something that I see a lot. This is a job posting that just has come out from Tiffany for the manager of consumer insights and analytics. And a lot of what they're looking for is just the classic, well-informed market researcher who can be objective and rigorous overall. But there's a few key bullet points that they have in here that to me really speak to this need for the market researcher to really be a data consultant, somebody who can really advise on when to pull in different data sources and how they might be blended either literally or just at a synthesis level, if you know what I mean. And here they say it right here, synthesize data across multiple sources to present holistic analyses. And this is definitely a theme I see on job ads for our profession, where the idea is that you should be able to use data from multiple sources. If you're working on something, especially a strategic level project, the expectation in many organizations these days is that it's not just going to be one thing. You're not going to do a survey and that's my strategic research. they do expect us to be able to call in from other types of data sources. Jeffrey, is this resonating at all with things that you see in our profession?
It is, and I'm seeing, with the shift last year to online qual, I'm seeing a recognition that we should be integrating qual in our research more than, I think it became pretty quant last year. And people are like, oh, but now there's all these other ways where I can make sure that I'm, I'm profiling each of the personas that were identified in the quant research from other research in detail with qual. And I find like qualitative researchers are good at messy inputs. They're much better at messy inputs than me. I'm a quant. My first instinct when I get a focus group thing is to count words, which is not what you should do from a transcript. So I do feel like and part of this probably is you need a team to do it well, because the different data sources, I mean, if you take the open-ended data, whether it's from social media or online qual or focus groups, that's a different skill set than analyzing, say, the clickstream patterns on your website. You definitely need to be broader in your skills, but also recognize that the team probably needs either some rock stars that they rent or some contractors or some folks with other skills to help complement that.
I think that's really well said. As a market researcher, I don't think anybody's saying you have to be the expert in how to implement all these, how to implement, design and implement surveys and scalable qual, and when to call in and how to integrate and harmonize data that might be coming from other first or third party data sources. But I do think that the expectation now is that you should know enough about what all the different data sources are that are available to you, to your team, so that you can be the person who's helping to say, okay, given the problem we're solving or the strategic issue we're tackling, these are the sources. Now we need to pull in those experts who know how to do them hands-on. But I think the expectation for a lot of mid and senior level researchers now is that you need to have some skill around designing methodology plans that do bring in more than just surveys, focus groups, and IDIs. And interestingly enough, you brought in the whole topic of qual, and that's another point I was going to bring out, is that yes, this whole idea that qual is important. I agree with you. I think that last year we did see a heavy emphasis in quant in a lot of organizations, although I did see a lot of teams really do great pivoting to online qual. Clearly some challenges, but there was a big pivot to online qual, obviously. What's interesting to me though is I do feel that a lot of what's happening in research these days, there is a quant sort of favorability towards quant or scale. And so I feel like with some of these online qual options now that can be scaled, that it's sort of appealing to a broader range of people who might not have in the past really been so turned on by a small number of IDIs. But now that you can do qualitative research, easily with groups of 30 or 50 or more, that becomes more compelling to them. So it's sort of an interesting thing. And also, I think part of this that is also reflected in this Tiffany ad. And again, I chose this example because it's representative of what I see in a lot of ads, is the idea that you do have to be proficient in understanding the different applications. To know, in their case, brand equity tracking, segmentation, ad testing, UX testing, et cetera, so that that if you're going to be a consultant, that you really truly understand how the data is being used, because that's what's going to allow you to figure out the right methodology, right? So again, just a good representative job ad that really captures some things around what I think we're going to see in 2022, which is going to be the need to develop skills so that you are comfortable working with and knowing when to recommend a wide range of methodologies and data sources. So that was a theme that I wanted to bring into our conversation for today. Jeffrey, what else are you seeing in terms of skill requirements or trends that you'd like to chat about?
So there's definitely, this one doesn't have visualization, but there's definitely, I think, a trend towards greater variety in visualization. Don't just show 50 bar charts. And there's, on the one continuum, there's infographics, which are visual storytelling. I mean, they're more around the almost editorial process of what data points you decided to highlight, and then working with graphic designers to better do that. And I know part of your question to me was, what are we thinking about doing for next year? And one of the things I always do, and I've actually already started working on my New Year's resolutions. So I usually have a little sheet, a little Google sheet where I write down things. And one of them is I'm trying to get a little better at design and working with visual designers. And part of that comes out of the fact that I realize I'm really bad at it this year. So I don't have the right vocabulary to talk with folks about their visuals that they produce, to kind of say, here's the problems. And so this one book that I just got is the Non-Designer's Design Book. And it's really about giving you a vocabulary, if like me, you're not a designer, to understand what works, what doesn't work, in layouts and graphics. And so I've tried to complement that with working with some different contractors this year, and I'm not a good manager of them. That's on me. It's just not my background or skill set. Like I said, I don't even have the right vocabulary to talk about, what I expect from them. So I'm not a good client. So that's an area that I'm working on for next year, given, how important visual communication is. That's something I definitely want to get better at.
I think it's such a great topic. And I think that also speaks to, well, tell me if this also intersects with something else that I'm seeing. I wasn't actually planning on talking about this today, but since you brought up data visualization, one of the things that I'm seeing, and I hear this a lot from our students in our various courses, is that they are continuing to get pushed to write shorter and shorter reports. So the amount of synthesis and value add is expected to be high, but the reports are expected to be very concise. And of course, good data visualization can help with that by being able to convey the information more, synthesized and with visually compelling methods.
Yeah, in the past, I would have a succinct view that kind of covered, all of the major topics. And now I'm seeing, well, it needs to be boiled down even further from that, which, as a completist, like we did all this other cool stuff, but here's the most important stuff for the decision at hand. And definitely a drive towards terser, faster. I mean, I've been having done C-level presentations, I really got the Associated Press journalism pyramid, do the most important first and then go down, because I've been prepped, the CEO will stay for 10 minutes, the CMO will leave 5 minutes after him. So
you can't bury the lead. If you bury the lead, they're never going to get it.
Yeah. So you got to hit the headlines, and then the team that's charged with implementing this, they're going to want more detail. So I've been used to tailoring the most important stuff up front, but now I'm being like, yeah, the other stuff is good for you to come up with what's most important, but we don't need to see it. And that's like, oh, I
know, I'm with you, right? Because we like to, we have such pride in our work, right? Yep. But okay. So it's an interesting thing that, if as people are getting pushed to write shorter reports, then a skill that they need is about writing short reports. And how do I make sure that I am doing a good job of getting not burying the lead, and grabbing people right away, because that's just the reality of what we're dealing with. And data visualizations can certainly be a part of that. And then another topic or a skill I think that's going to be important for 2022, and I know this one might sound a little bit odd, but in market research, obviously a lot of people have been working from home. And as organizations are starting to open up again, we're still seeing a lot of people working from home, or companies offering hybrid or work from home options. And so another job ad that I'd seen recently was from Escalent, which is a large market research firm. And in their job ad, they basically say, if you want an in-office experience, then we have offices, I think, in Michigan and someplace else. But the ad was placed for remote work. We're looking for market researchers. This is remote. You'll telecommute. And it's very common. I see lots of teams that are basically trying to be flexible. They want to get the best talent. They know that there's still a lot of emotional issues and uncertainties and family challenges right now. still ongoing. And so a lot of organizations are making that offer. And I know the signs I'm seeing suggest that a lot of market research professionals are going to choose hybrid or full-time work from home. I'm not seeing a lot of teams where it looks like everybody's eager to come back into the office full-time.
Yeah, and for those of you who can't remember, I just had to look it up. So Escalent is Market Strategies and More Pace, two great names merged. Because I'm like, I know I know them. Who are they?
Thank you.
And yeah, both great companies. Yeah, and so then it changes kind of the team dynamics. So like one of the things I found last year that's carried over into this year is certainly last year it was not fair to expect people working at home to be at their desk at 9. They might have had kids that they were taking care of, who were now home all day, and just other things. And so sort of the expectation that they'd be at their desk from 9 to 5, I had to slowly disabuse myself of that when working with other people last year. And then part of it was realizing, well, then there's probably some skills that we need cross-training on. So because we need more resiliency, that someone that in a traditional environment, you would have gone over to their desk and said, hey, I really need this. Now it's unfair to do that given the demands of these times. And so do you have other people who can do those skills? So I'm basically about books time this year. So
no, for Alchemer.
This is Lua. Yeah. So this is for Alchemer. So we do survey programming in a lot of different environments, but Alchemer, one of the reasons I recommend Alchemer is because they have a scripting language, which is based on Lua, which is an open source scripting language. And there were times where I would read other people's code. I don't usually program surveys, but then there'd be times where I'd QA it and I'd be like, geez, I really wish I could understand this better and make a change that now that I'm QAing it, it has occurred to me that I specified the wrong thing. So that's something that I've been, that's a skill that I've been working on, making sure that, not that you're going to hire me to do your Lua programming, but that when we do projects where we do that, I can be an asset or do a little bit of the heavy lifting. So.
I love that. That's great. I also think there are some skills around being effective working from home. I think a lot of organizations did. I certainly know many teams that this last year that hadn't previously had really great project management or task management platforms in place. And a lot of teams had to do that this past year and a half or so, is get some tools in place to improve project or task management sorts of things with remote teams. But I think that we saw a lot of progress in terms of people becoming more technically efficient using online tools, whether it's people who had to figure out how to screen share in Zoom finally. Okay, I can confidently screen share in Zoom or in other apps, or people have really had to learn how to take advantage of all the things that are built into Teams for those organizations and such. But I also feel like there's some soft skills here around working from home. One of the things that I see that comes up is kind of the need to over communicate almost. When you work from home and you're remote, that you have to communicate with the team, and you may find yourself having to intentionally over communicate. And it's not about trying to annoy people by being redundant, but about making sure that information is really getting heard, especially if you are relying a lot on chat type things. Hopefully people aren't sending 10-page emails anymore, but it's still that skill of remembering that just because I said something or I thought I communicated it, I may need to over communicate it now that I'm working from home. Or if it's not about over communication, certainly some soft skills around how do you make sure that the information and the sense of urgency that you're trying to impart is being effective. So it's sort of communication skills that need to even be more amped up, but I think there's something about really over communicating and making sure that you're getting heard.
And developing the culture that works for your group. So I know a lot of my clients are disappointed I'm not on Slack. And we do use Teams in the office, but Teams is for I am stuck and I need help now. We tried not to use Teams for, I mean, I think a lot of the work that we do benefits from focus, whether it's writing a questionnaire, programming a questionnaire, testing, I mean, doing analysis, running reports. It's good to not be interrupted. And so I find the chat apps to be very interrupt centric. So we tend not to, so we try not to do that. And then are the tools that you're using, can they give you visibility? So rather than me say, hey, how far along are you in this? Well, I can log into the survey platform and see, oh, the whole questionnaire is there. Seems like they've, set the skip patterns up for half of it. Can I answer the question by looking at the software tools that we're using jointly, whether it's project management or the analytics tools or the, and so that's required a bit of a culture shift for me is, trying not to interrupt and trying to use the tools in ways that sometimes feels like I'm not really stalking you. I just want to see where you are in this without bothering you. And so that's been, a change.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. So on one hand, the technology does allow us to have a little bit more transparency and to check on each other's work. Obviously, not trying to in a negative way, but just so we know when we can pop in and help. And then the other thing that's kind of a corollary to that, that's a challenge, and I think is another part of the soft skills around this area, perhaps, is I've heard this theme a few times now where people are saying, well, I'm doing my work and it's there, and people just go in and then they just make changes instead of talking to me first. And I don't like that, because if they had talked to me, then I could have explained, oh no, the reason why I had those slides set up a certain way was because I'm trying to do a build to this next point, or I'm planning to speak to something else, or the reason why I have my, the reason why I've got my, data analysis structured this way is for this reason. And sometimes I'm hearing from people, oh, my manager just goes in and they make changes, and I don't necessarily get that collaboration. So I think that's part of this issue of, like you said, know your team's culture, set your best practices. What do we use chat for? What don't we use it for? Yes, it's great that we can see each other's work more transparently now, but what's our policy or what's our best practices about when you collaborate on that versus, oh, I've got access, I'll just go in and make those changes.
Yeah, and I think early on, I was like sharing questionnaires in Google Docs. We use Office 365 and Google Docs, depends on the client. Better to give them the ability to suggest and comment than to edit, because a lot of times they might be like, oh, we're not finding out how important things are. So I've added this whole important battery and I've changed this. And it's like, well, actually, we were going to do a key drivers analysis and derive importance, shorter questionnaire, better experience for the respondent. So, but they've made all these changes that then we have to undo and explain. And so by shifting it to comments and suggestions, then, we could have the calls. And it's interesting that one thing I do like is no one expects to call me and talk to me. And certainly when I started in my career, if a client would call whenever, and you'd take that call. It was a different culture. You would answer the phone and then you might have an hour-long call, even if you were, about to do something, that's what you would do. And then maybe you'd send a fax. But now everybody's like, well, there is a time where you need to have a call. But the good news is people are like, well, we'll set up that call. So there are times where they'll go through and it's like, let's talk through these issues. A lot of times I'll have projects that we happily do the whole questionnaire design, electronically. And there's other times where it just benefits to get on a call and chat through it. And that's a more efficient use of all of our time than doing it asynchronously. And people are we have online scheduling forums. I know you were one of the first people I ever saw who used an online scheduling forum. And so now it's just so easy for people to book time on calendars that's been and people seem to get, there's times where it's better to have a quick call. So let's have a quick call.
Right. Yeah. And that's part of the team culture. So it's interesting. So work from home is obviously going to continue either full-time or hybrid for most of our market research and insights colleagues. And then, related to that, all the skills around that to be efficient and effective. And also maybe, if you're on a team that doesn't have clarity around some of these best practices, it's a worthwhile conversation to have, to say, are we over relying on certain tools? Are we utilizing other tools? And is there something about what we're doing that may not be promoting collaboration, real-time collaboration as much as we could be? So
Yeah, we ripped out our project management tool and put in a new one, and that was painful, but we're in a much better spot now because it's easier to use. We've got greater buy-in. The last one was just too complicated for what we needed, but that's that's not a pleasant conversation for anybody.
Project management tools are brutal. May I ask what you're using now?
So we switched to Microsoft Planner. It's free with Teams. So we had a paid subscription to a dedicated system before. This is free with Teams. It makes it easy to assign tasks to different people. We're probably pushing it. We're probably right at the edge of what it's really meant to do, but because of the tight integration with Office, it's working for us.
Interesting. I to be honest with you, I didn't even know about Planner, and I'm in Office 3. We run on Office 365 here too. We use a tool called Rike, which is one of those standalone. Yep. It's WRIKE, and even for like things like managing projects on the staffing side or course development, course maintenance tasks, everything is in Rike. And we tested a bunch. We piloted actually a few tools before we picked Rike, and we've been on Rike now for like 5 years. And that's these things always do require some updates, and occasional refreshes. But I've been really happy with it as a tool.
Yeah, and so I'd make sure you've invested in the right tools. I mean, a lot of times it's not just culture; it's culture and the fit with the tools you're using, or the fact that you don't have a tool and you should for a specific to fill a specific need.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, and then in wrapping up then, as we talk about skills for 2022, what I have here then, Jeffrey, is we've talked about the need for people to be consultative about data. We've talked about the need to improve your data visualization skills, which may have a corollary about rethinking also in 22 how you design your reports so that they can be in these concise formats that we really need. And we also talked about some work from home skills, which actually may also include not just the skills of working from home, but the skill of perhaps showing some leadership with your team to say, we need to have some conversations about what we can do to make sure that we're as collaborative as we can be in 2022. And
have you done a survey of your customers? Because a lot of researchers don't, to figure out where the gaps are in the organization. And, I feel like in the social media world, everyone's putting the best face forward all the time. And for these types of things, you really just have to be honest. You don't have to go on a webinar and announce that you're really bad at managing graphic designers, but have that honest conversation with yourself about where you need to improve your skills. And then make the resolution or the commitment to improve that area of skills. And hopefully that's an area that you're aware that you need to improve, or maybe by soliciting feedback either from your peers or from your customers, you realize that's something where we're not addressing. The other thing to add into that is, have you checked out your competitors' websites lately? Have you seen what they're talking about? Can you do that stuff? Do you want to be able to do that stuff? That's another competitive analysis is always tough because you only talk to people who are unhappy with other vendors. You don't talk to the people who are happy with them. So you have this blinded view of your competition. So it's always good to look and see what they're good at and evaluate yourself against that as well. So lots of ways to look for self-improvement.
Excellent. I really like that. And then I'm going to just add one small point on top of that, which is I love this idea of whether you're looking at other market research agency teams or what other market research client side teams might be talking about that you can learn from. I always tell people you should also look at what the management consulting companies are doing, because there's a lot of management consulting companies that do market research these days. They do high-end studies that get widely read by the C-suite. And the way they do their studies, the way they blend data sources, the way they deliver their reports, obviously, executive level clients are seeing market research reports, but they're also seeing these other market research reports from management consulting companies. Obviously, they have much deeper pockets usually for they have graphic design teams, but it's still a great opportunity to learn and identify, things that we can apply in our own work.
Yeah, I love downloading, a lot of those reports might be somebody hired one of those firms to develop something that's going to be a lead generator for them. So you go and you've signed up now for some enterprise software that you'll never need, but you can read the full paper the way that they did it. And sometimes, it might be how they visualize something. It might be their methodology. It might be the way they went from survey findings to the ramifications of what those mean. But those are great reports that you can read and study. That's a great idea.
Beautiful. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I also just want to say, for folks who might be watching all 4 of these are all now available through the Conversations for Research Rockstars video podcast on YouTube. You can also get the audio versions of this on Apple Podcasts and also on the Amazon or the Amazon/Audible podcast section on Amazon. So I hope, if you enjoy these, please do give us a like and a review. And I always appreciate feedback. Thanks, Jeffrey. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks. Have great holidays and a prosperous 2022.
Thanks.